Should it stay or should it go? That has been the hot topic about TikTok for the last several weeks or months in the marketing world. And then it happened over the weekend. They actually shut it down. But by the time you hear this podcast, chances are it will already be back up and running. However, the reason why we're going to talk about it today is that there's a lesson to be learned about the importance of keeping things in your own house. And that will be the topic that we unpack for today's episode. Hello, welcome to the Productize Your Parish podcast, where creativity meets strategy and ideas turn into revenue. I'm your host, Greg Davis, founder of Azola Creative, and each week we focus on discovering new and creative product marketing strategies. We like to hear real-world success stories from people like you, and we want to share new and creative ways for you to dominate in your market. Now, this week's quote comes from Jack Welch, former CEO of GE, very influential CEO of GE. And he said, control your own destiny or someone else will. That quote is very pertinent to our discussion today because we're going to talk about the importance of keeping things in your own house, sort of being the master of your own destiny. And where this whole story begins is really based on what's happening with TikTok right now. So chances are, by the time that you're listening to this, the temporary ban of TikTok will already be over. Very short-lived ban of TikTok, and will be up to I guess, a 90-day extension is what is being planned. And so within that time, we'll see whether or not there's an agreement that's made around some form of an American company doing an acquisition or even a partial acquisition of the American piece of TikTok. That all remains to be seen. But, leading up to this, there's been a lot of talk about just all of the financial loss that this uh, creates for TikTok advertisers, TikTok influencers. And that's kind of where this story begins when it comes to the idea of keeping things in your own house. Now, it's not uncommon for a third party platform to change the rules. And so what I see a lot of times, I see companies that build businesses or build really strong revenue streams using third party systems. It could be anything that you're doing that's just outside of your own world that you're using because it's the way you're generating income. And that's smart business by all means, as far as the idea of using these other platforms, and that's how you're going to likely grow. I mean, I myself am doing that from a podcasting standpoint. The ability to put this podcast on the air is using third-party systems. But the challenge that you have to worry about when it comes to using anything third party is the fact that the rules can change at any time. And when those rules change, it can either make you explode from a growth standpoint, or it can make you implode from a financial standpoint. And I've seen both things happen. And unfortunately, just like in life, there are good days and there are bad days, and you can't have a good day without some bad days. The same thing with a lot of these platforms is that you can't have good times, great times without having some bad times. And it just depends on which side of that equation you're on as to how you're going to feel about using that platform at the time. And I'm going to point back really just to kind of kick things off outside of the TikTok world, because that's sort of just, it's doing its thing. You're going to hear about it again and again over the next 90 days or shorter once they finally figure out what it is that they're going to do. Otherwise, 90 days from now, we might be looking at the same thing that just happened over the weekend. But I'm going to point first to Google, because this is a place where if you're a marketer, you're all too familiar with the ability for Google to be a kingmaker, or to just turn you into a pauper. And I've seen this again and again and again, is that Google has their algorithm, and marketers are learning ways to use that algorithm so that they can generate more traffic to their websites, so that they can monetize that, hopefully from an advertising standpoint, Or as a business, you're hoping that you can, be able to monetize that through more sales, more leads, more sales. And really going over the last 20 years, that algorithm has changed again and again and again. The rules in which how you use Google to generate more SEO traffic has changed again and again and again. And it has crushed businesses as well as it's helped businesses thrive. So again, like I said, it's kind of depends on which side of the coin you're on as to how your story ends in that world. But I remember way back when, we're talking probably, what was it, maybe 2010, somewhere between 2010 and 2012. And they did a huge update. I think it was the Panda and the Penguin update that may have happened back in that time. And this was crushing for a lot of e-commerce businesses. Again, that was the world that I was in, as I was so focused on e-commerce. And so I would have clients calling me all the time saying, "Oh my gosh, like I was, I'm swimming in money basically, and now I'm broke. The business, I've got maybe 6 months left that I can hold out. I need help." Or maybe it was even less time than that, maybe 3 months, and it's just like, I need help, I need help, I need help. Well, part of the issue there is that a lot of these businesses had become so successful because of SEO that that's just about all that they focused on. There was one gentleman that I worked with years ago. It was fascinating because he had been extremely successful and then had this new update from Google just crush his business. And he was down to, again, I think he was one of those guys, like, he was trying to stretch by on maybe a 90 days, or maybe he could go a little bit longer if he could make it, but he was dying because the majority of his business had always come from search. And his product wasn't necessarily something that lent itself to a lot of repurchases. So it wasn't something that people were just constantly coming back for more. Not to say that that didn't exist, but a lot of his business were just always new buyers. A lot of his products were just for new buyers. They buy it once, they kind of move on. And so basically what it came down to for him is that he had one saving grace. He had put all of his eggs into SEO, and so he was really hurting. But the thing that he did have, which was really cool to uncover for him, was that it turns out he had like 12,000 email accounts, email subscribers that he didn't even realize he had, because he wasn't paying attention to email marketing. Even back then, email marketing was still a little voodoo for some, and they just people didn't leverage it. And so he was really he was really tapping into just the SEO part and generating over 12,000 clients that he had, or 12,000 customers. Well, because of that, we were able to actually implement an email marketing strategy for him. And that's actually what brought him back to life. He had so many customers over the years. That's pretty significant, like 12,000, just to all of a sudden find that as your database of past customers was really, really cool. So anyway, what we were able to do is we were able to use that, because as I told him, I mean, there was no quick fix around the Google thing. Just Google, just for you to know, in case you're not familiar. I mean, I always say SEO is like a pregnancy. A lot of people want it, they say, we're going to do SEO and we're going to do this and it's going to happen really fast. I'm going to just get all these sales, because that's what you hear. SEO is great for generating all this free traffic, as they like to call it. Well, SEO is really more like a pregnancy. It takes months and months and months for you to really start to see the benefit of SEO. Not to say you can't see little benefits along the way. There could be some spikes here and there, some things that start to happen for you. But for you to truly start to really dominate in your market, SEO is going to be more like a 6 to 9 month to 12-month strategy. And so it's important for companies to understand that, because if you go in with the wrong expectations, you're going to be let down. But, you know, I always say, like, when a woman is pregnant, it's not like at 3 months you can sit around complaining that the baby doesn't take care of itself and feed itself and do all these things. Now, for the woman, it feels that way because she's uncomfortable being pregnant. But for the actual real world of this, the baby hasn't been born yet, and so you need time for it to grow before you're going to see the benefit of all that hard work of being pregnant for those 9 months. The same thing goes for SEO. It's going to be just a lot of stuff that doesn't feel like it's doing anything for you. It just sort of feels like hard to even put your finger on. But then eventually it does, it gets there and you start to see the benefit. Now, newer businesses are a little different than an existing business. So sometimes a newer business can get there a little faster. But at the end of the day, just sidebar, I want to make sure I mention that for people to kind of have the right expectation when you're thinking about SEO. Anyway, going back to the whole point is that the reality is that if all of your eggs are in that basket of SEO, it's very possible that Google could change the rules on you at any time and it could crush your business. And I'm seeing these things happen recently too. I know colleagues that have had things in the last 2 years that have been soul crushing for them and really destroyed the business they had built because the rules changed. So that's an example just from a Google standpoint. But I'll give you another example. This is from a company I worked for years ago, and we were in the e-commerce development space, and it was more of the SMB e-commerce development space. And Yahoo Store was our biggest partner. Yahoo Store back then was pretty much the originator of a do-it-yourself e-commerce store. Now we all know that Shopify is kind of it's the leader in that space. But back then, I mean, Shopify wasn't even a gleam in anyone's eye. And so it was all about Yahoo Store. And so Yahoo Store had a developer partner network. And the company I was working for was the number one partner in that network. I mean, they were tight, tight, tight as far as the way that we were working together until Yahoo kind of changed some of the rules as to how they wanted the developer partner network to operate. And that created a rift kind of between them and our company. And it started to hurt our leads significantly. All of a sudden, Yahoo Store had kind of turned the dial in a different direction. And all those leads weren't coming through the same way they used to. Now, there's a lot more behind the scenes I won't go into. But the reality is, like, that was essentially what was happening. It's just that the they turned the knob, and now it was pointing all that traffic in a different place. It was sending leads to different agencies that were kind of getting in on the game as well. And so it was devastating for the company I was working with. And I mean, we went through all kinds of really tough times, and they had to make a lot of really tough calls. The two owners of that business were phenomenal entrepreneurs, but they had to make some really tough decisions along the way, and it was not a great time for them for sure. Um, so the point being is just that it doesn't even necessarily have to just be from a marketing strategy, but like that was a sales channel for us. That was a referral channel, huge part of the business. I mean, literally, you could walk through the sales department and the phones were just constantly ringing. It was practically order taking because that was how strong the leads were. And then it dried up so bad that you could hear that the silence was deafening, and it was tough. So that's where again you got to be careful in any scenario if you're putting all of your effort into all these other places. Yes, do it. You want to diversify as much as you possibly can. I think that's the point. It's just like investing. You want to diversify because if you have everything based on SEO, that could hurt you. If you have everything based on a referral channel or sales channels that you develop partnership with, and then something happens there, they pull the plug or they change the rules, you're hurting. You know, the same is true for something like Facebook or Instagram or anything where influencers are trying to make a name for themselves, make a living for themselves. And there's definitely a trickle around effect. I don't know if you call it trickle down, but it's trickle around effect because there are so many other companies that are helping support that effort that are all affected when those things change. So the idea here is to make sure that you're trying to get as many people as possible into your house under your rules. That is where I go to Old Faithful here is your actual website. Your website, everything that you have on your website is is within your control to a certain degree. Now, to unpack that a little bit, I'm just going to say you have to think about it depends on what type of platform you're on. So again, if you're on, say, a Wix or a Squarespace or something like that, those are a DIY kind of website builder where you kind of you get a great deal of flexibility, but you don't get all the keys to the kingdom. But you can do it yourself. I mean, in most cases, you can do it yourself without needing to use anybody third party to even help you with. I'm kind of surprised even I see some developers out there, which I think is a little shady. They are out there selling $1,000 deals to build websites for people, and they're using Squarespace and Wix, which to me is just I think you're dishonest in doing that because quite frankly, the client could do it themselves. They now, if they want to pay you to do it, hey, look, there's a lot of things we can do ourselves, but we pay somebody else to do it. As long as that's an upfront discussion, okay. But I've seen some of these pitches. I've seen some of these people selling it, and they don't admit, hey, this is actually built for you to do it yourself, you know? So yeah, again, it's a little shady to me, but it is what it is. People get away with it. Then there's other platforms that you could be looking at. So you think about WordPress being one of the absolute most common uh, website, content management systems, CMSs. Just about everybody uses WordPress. Uh, I'd say like major lion's share of the industry is on WordPress. Unless you're in the e-commerce space, then you might be somewhere else. But not to say you can't do it on WordPress. Not knocking WordPress, they have WooCommerce. It is possible to be selling online through WordPress. It's just that there are probably some other platforms that people think of differently, or think of first when it comes to an e-commerce store versus more of just a lead generation type of website. So anyway, point being is that the WordPress scenario is really good for a lot of people because it is a lot more flexible to work with. And there are a lot of website builder tools that are out there now that make it really easy again for people to even just do it themselves. Now, it's a little harder on WordPress compared to a Squarespace or a Wix, and the idea that some of those customizations still require a little bit of coding sometimes. Just depends on what your skill set is, so having somebody do that for you is not a bad idea in the WordPress space because there's more to it. But the point being is that you can do a lot of things on WordPress or something equivalent of that, and you can kind of control your own destiny to a large degree. Even if you're working with custom coding. I mean, I've had business partners and friends that are custom programmers and they build sites from scratch and they're phenomenal at what they do. And so, I mean, there's all kinds of options like that. Again, that's going to be a different kind of expense for people. But at the end of the day, you have the ability to build the type of environment that you want. And so, what my message, I guess, to make all this rambling about these different platforms to kind of make sense for you is I'm a huge advocate for the idea of get people to your website. Don't build your financial future off of third-party systems because those third-party systems, if they change the rules, if they shut down, if they just do something different, that can mess up what you've built. And so your business could be kind of on shaky legs. Now, you might do it for a few years and take the money and run and it's all good. But if you're trying to build something long term and it's going to be something that's more online, I just get nervous when it comes to everything being reliant on someone else's terms. Because I mean, you name it, they could add transaction fees. That's going to hurt your bottom line when it comes to your revenue that's coming in. There's all kinds of just little nuanced things that can happen to you that you want to be careful of. So the idea here is to try to make sure that anything you're doing from a social media, from an email, from you name it, partners, everything, drive them into your website as much as possible because there you have the ability to control the conversation, you have the ability to control a lot of the environment. Now, obviously, people that are monetizing on YouTube and TikTok and things like that. I mean, that's part of the game, but that's I guess that's your risk. If you're going to go down that road and that's going to be where you're going to make your money, well, then you also have to realize you have the ability, you're forfeiting the stability of kind of being the master of your own domain and the sense that they could pull the rug on you and take everything away, make everything harder for you, uh, based on what you've built. So I guess if you're going to go down that road, be very careful about that and know going in that that is your risk. I'm going to take a break just for a moment, and I want to talk to you for the last time. We're going to run this promotion around the blueprint, the SMB marketing blueprint. But to get there, you need to go to blueprint.azulacreative.com. And let me just tell you a little bit about it. Again, as I've talked about on this show today, a lot of people don't understand what the marketing is doing for them. They don't understand what the expectation should be if we're going to do SEO. What is that really going to generate for me? People want to go on social media and they think that they're going to be millionaires, in a week because they're going to have something go viral, and they don't quite understand what they're doing there. There's all kinds of misinformation when it comes to how marketing works. So the idea behind the SMB marketing blueprint is that it's a 7-day email course and it's free. All you need to do is sign up, and each day you get a lesson emailed to you. And it gives you details around understanding what the different marketing channels are, how they work for you, what kind of the persona of these marketing channels are, and how it might fit into your business. Because again, if you're a B2B business selling in kind of a mid-market, well, that might be something where LinkedIn might be a little bit more at play for you versus, say, TikTok, because your customers may just not be there. And so there's different ways of looking at the different marketing channels and how it actually applies best for you, even from an SEO standpoint. Look, I know I was kind of trashing on the SEO thing today, but I don't want it to sound like that. I'm a huge advocate and fan for SEO. Like, I believe in SEO. I know that things are changing because of just things like AI, and there's all kinds of different results now in the way that things are reported from an SEO standpoint, but I don't think it's irrelevant yet. And so I'm still a huge fan of leveraging SEO for what it is you're doing, because you have to always think about there's intent versus just, are you looking for information? Or are you looking to actually do a transaction? And that can be a difference when it comes to how SEO works for you. But anyway, the whole point of it is, I see, I already go into it because I get on the subject and I just want to try to help explain it. That is why I developed the SMB marketing blueprint. The idea behind it is that at the end of 7 days, you're going to have all the tools that you need to start to build out a better marketing blueprint for yourself, a better marketing plan, so that whether you're doing it yourself or if you're working with a consultant or an agency or whatever it is, you have a better idea of what it is you're asking for and what it is that they're going to do. You have a better conversation with them. You can relate to them better. And it just makes the entire thing more effective and profitable, because you're actually working off of real world expectations based on, really, you have a better understanding of what it is you're even asking a marketer to do. This is really key. If you're a marketer, it's beneficial for you to do this, just because it gives you more tools in the toolbox for you to have better conversations with the people that you're working with, the clients that you're working with, or the employer that you're working with. And if you are a business owner or a business leader, or someone who is involved in making marketing decisions or marketing hires, this is going to come in really handy for you, because it's going to give you the ability to have the right kinds of conversations and become a better partner to the marketing team that you're working with. So go to blueprint.azulacreative.com and just sign up for the 7-day email course, and just pick up the tools, and I hope they'll be beneficial to you. But at the very least, just make sure that you're arming yourself with the right kind of information. All right, so to wrap it up, from a homework standpoint, it's fairly easy. It's really start to look at how many third-party tools you base your revenue on versus how much of it is something that you are in control of your own destiny. If you have good partnerships, Wonderful. How solid are those partnerships? And if they went away, or if you lost one or two of those partnerships, what would that do to your bottom line? What would that do to your sales? If you're working and you're really dominating in SEO right now, or you're leveraging pay-per-click, or you're doing affiliate marketing, whatever it is you're doing, what would happen if that channel went away? Would it possibly destroy everything you built? If you're using TikTok or YouTube or Facebook and it's been very successful for you, if it went away, would it destroy your business? Any of those types of questions, anything that is you're doing for your business and the way that you're working with associations or whoever it is, any of that stuff, you need to ask that question of yourself to really understand how great a risk you're in of losing things because of something changing in their world. And so the first part is just to be aware of it, to understand what kind of where you are. The second part is for you to start looking at new ways that you can actually try to change that or diversify what it is you're doing. If everything's in SEO right now, how can you do two or three things above that that you can be generating income from? Or if something is starting to dry up, do you recognize why? And again, is there something you can do about it, or is there something you need to change in the way you adapt that? Just let's get out of this scenario where all of a sudden we can have our businesses shut down because a third party system changed the rules or it got blacked out or whatever it is. So that's your homework for the week. Be sure you do that. Now, if you're just tuning in or you've been listening for a little bit, again, this is a newer podcast. I would greatly appreciate it if you would follow the show as well as leave a review. That goes a long way in trying to help me spread the word of the podcast. And also, if you have questions or comments or something, a topic that you think should be discussed, I want you to let me know. Go to azolacreative.com/podcast, and there you have a form that you can fill out and you can put whatever information you want in there. Just let me know if you are okay with me using your name or any kind of personal details. I'll try to leave out as much as I can just to kind of protect the innocent. But just go to azolacreative.com/podcast and let me know anything that you might want to discuss. All right, that wraps it up for this week's show. Thank you for listening. And I hope that if you are a TikTok person, hopefully you've been able to survive over the last couple of days until it got back up and running. And hopefully they'll get this thing worked out. I know my daughter is definitely upset by it. So, yeah, for her sake, I need TikTok to get back up and running. But if we learn anything, it's just that again, we have to be masters of our own destiny. We have to just make sure that we are always thinking about how do we control the outcome versus other people controlling it for us. Final note is always remember, don't worry about the things that can go wrong, but always be thinking about everything that could go right. Get yourself in the right mindset to think about the fact that mistakes are going to happen. If you're making mistakes, it's good. It means you're trying things. And if they don't work out, that's okay too. It means you tried something, which is a better success story than I did nothing and never failed. So failure can be a good thing. So don't worry about the things that will go wrong. Just focus on the things that go right. All right. Have a good week. Talk to you next week.